intro. All right, and we're in there like swimwear.
You got me?
Yeah, you're there, brother. Welcome to our first episode of the Team Room. It's going to be a little bit of a production, creation here, so we got to be patient. I'm trying to figure out if we're already linked to YouTube Live and if I can send you the link, but we'll just figure it out and we'll go from there.
So should I check your YouTube Live on YouTube?
Yeah, sure. Why not? See what you find.
What is your YouTube channel? Florida Dan?
Something like that.
Most importantly, my headset works.
Perfect. I mean, it is. It's live. It says upcoming, the Team Room launch.
Florida Dan?
Yeah. I mean, I know you subscribe to my channel. Come on, man.
You know, honestly, I thought I did. I subscribed to you on Instagram.
Okay. I will figure out how to link it to yours later. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here like two tech nerds licking the screen and the window and
here we go. Florida Dan Lounsbury. You're live. Let me see what it looks like live.
All right. So tell me this, brother. When we came up with the name for this, the Team Room, tell me what it means in Army Special Forces community. What is the Team Room and what's the thought about that name?
Yeah, the Team Room. Each Special Forces team has a team room where it's really the offices, but it's also it's also the clubhouse, so to speak, right? So your locker's in there, your gear's in there, your desk is in there, your computer's in there. It's where you're with the team. It's where you do all your planning. It's where you go to hide when you don't want to be doing different tasks, so.
But is it also a place where like you can kind of let your guard down and you guys can be honest and open with each other? Or if someone, makes a mistake or does something, are you guys like, hey, we got to come together as a unit? I did this and you didn't do that. I went left and you were supposed to go right. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a locker room, just like on a sports team. It's the team room is really just a locker room.
Okay. I got a sea story for you. The first time I was on an aircraft carrier, I was on the USS America CV-66. And I go walking into the ready room of one of the, I think it was the F-14 squadron at the time, Tomcats. And in my brain, I'm thinking, man, I'm going to see Iceman and Maverick and all these cool guys. And what I didn't know at the time, this was when I was an enlisted guy, was that, those are the most coveted slots for naval aviators, right? So the guys who get that graduate in the top of their class because they've got the highest test scores, the best evals. They took calculus and calculus-based physics. So with all due respect to all my brothers who I love, it was like Geek Central and Nerd Central. And I'm like, dude, where's Iceman? Like, where's all the cool guys? And they're like, it was nothing like what you see in the movies, man. So some of my experiences with
they weren't all jacked and tan and lubed up, ready to go play volleyball.
No, I mean, one guy was in a Speedo, but the other funny thing was, the perfect aviator is like between 5'4" and like 5'6" or 5'8" because they fit well into the what we called the cockpit. I think that is no longer PC because you don't have to have a cock to fly an aircraft.
Yeah,
maybe the control room or whatever it is. I don't know. So
the control vessel.
Sure. I was gonna jump into the.
I wanted to ask. I actually last night while I was working on a bunch of shorts and putting them out there and lining them up for Devin, I had Crimson Tide going on in the background, and I wanted to ask you about the realism in that movie because one of the pictures that you sent me when we were like sending pictures back and forth, either for the podcast or whatever it was you at a Periscope. So I didn't know how much time you spent on subs.
Good question. I got a little funky music I'm going to put on in the background to set the mood.
I hear that. Is this turning into like a segment?
There I was.
Yeah.
So when you are a midshipman, which is our term for what I believe you guys called cadets, I'm not sure. And when you're you are required to commit time during the summer to go on different types of deployments. And the purpose of that is so that if you don't have familiarity with what the Navy has to offer as far as different types of warfare communities, that's your opportunity to gain exposure. And so I had to spend time on a guided missile cruiser, on a submarine, on an aircraft carrier, et cetera. And so that picture was one that I took while I was still a midshipman. And it was, I think they called it a Tiger Cruise, and I don't remember what the acronym stood for, but no, I was clearly not built for subs, man. You have to scooch down when you go through these little watertight integrity hatches that they have on a sub, and you have to step up and over the integrity. So it's kind of this motion where you're like bebopping, and I was not made for subs. No.
Yeah. We have the same thing at West Point, and in the Army, it's called CTLT, Cadet Training, Leadership Training is maybe what it stands for. But it's the same thing where so first you put in a wish list of branches, like different branches of the Army that you want to go see. And then you also put in a wish list of like bases, like where to go. So for me, I was still up in the air of like what I wanted to do after West Point. So I just I wanted to use it as like summer vacation. So all my like locations I wanted to go visit, it was like Italy, Hawaii, Germany, Alaska. I think that my fifth one was Korea. You have to go all the way down to like El Paso, Texas, or Fort Bliss. But I got Korea, so I was able to go to Korea for like 3-4 weeks, all around and Fielder does.
Come a little closer to the mic for me, please. Thank you.
I'm using my headset.
It's much better.
It's much better now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I was using that.
Maybe. All right. So I got to just give you this quick story, and then we'll move on. So same thing. I got to go to Hawaii one summer for 5 weeks, and I spent 5 weeks on the USS Warden, a guided missile cruiser, because I'd already been in the fleet. And they were like, look, this is stupid. Why don't you just tell us where you want to go? And the XO of my ROTC unit had a brother who was stationed on the Warden out in Pearl Harbor. And he was like, man, if you want, I could probably hook you up for the summer and you can go there. And yes. So my only time that I've ever been to Hawaii was 5 weeks in the middle of the summer. And it didn't suck, man. It wasn't bad.
It's got to be smarter, not harder.
Correct. So I've got the 5 whys, the 5 W's rather, on the screen, the who, what, where, when, and why. And I guess, what I want to convey about the concept of the team room, and what I want to ask you is, who's this for? What are we going to talk about? And why would anybody want to tune in and listen to it? Why is the team room different than what we do on Team Harrow and on the Reset series?
I mean, honestly, I should be asking you these questions because this whole concept of the team room was your idea.
So, well, since you asked me, Ben, I will tell you that it's a couple of things. Number one is I want us to be able to have a platform where we can go live when we're doing work, whether it's for block divers or stuff we're doing with Team Harrow or other things that we're working on, like boom, there's the block divers plug.
There you go.
Face, right? Or here, I'll put it in the upper corner. Whether it's block divers or whether it's just Team Harrow that we're doing, or whether it's stuff that that I'm working on. And so that's one. And then number two is we're going to get into this little part of what it is that we're doing on the team room, which I think is a little bit unique or different, and that is the 3 to deploy. And I came up with that idea when you and I were talking about 3, 2, 1 execute or 3, 2, 1 deploy, which is basically I want to wrap up every segment that we do with 3 suggestions or 3 ideas of something that you could do or that the viewer or the listener could do that they think is something that'll help them get better at whatever aspect of their life it is that we're talking about that day, right? So if it's on grit and mental toughness, we're going to give you 3 to deploy. Pick one, make that be your takeaway, and then practice it and come back next week when we're talking, jump in the live chat, maybe share some notes like, hey, Ben, I took your suggestion on this, and this is what I found, and this is what I did. And so I hope that's a value add that we can provide. Not that we don't do that already with Team Harrow or the Reset, but I wanted to make the 3 to Deploy something that's uniquely tied to when we jump in the team room and we have these chats.
No, I mean, listen, first off, with what we're doing with Reset, it's definitely more of an entertainment and educational piece of, either you and I are talking about something, or we're bringing somebody on that has, an amazing story or something in terms of like the health and wellness world that we think it would be beneficial for people to hear. It's not interactive, right? So this is definitely something where it should be more interactive. The 3 to Deploy, what works, what doesn't. That's the value I see in the team room and this whole live concept.
Perfect. All right. So today, I wanted to talk about something that gives us an opportunity to focus on what we're doing with the Reset series and Optimal Wellness Group. You and I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm calling it the 5 pillars of wealth. There's probably going to be typos in some of the things, by the way, that I put on the screen. So if there are, we're working out the kinks. I got fat fingers, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
you need to fire our executive producer. Yeah.
Did we say it was 4 pillars in the podcast, or did we say it was 5?
I think it was 4 pillars. It
Okay.
was, and I believe it was physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this to include spiritual, but I'll put that under stress and mindset. So when I wrote down the agenda this morning, I put sleep recovery, exercise and movement, diet, nutrition, stress and mindset, and team and accountability. And I think we took team and accountability for granted because it's something that you and I have spoken about, but I wanted to add it to the list here. So maybe why don't we start with sleep and recovery? And I've got a little cheat sheet of some notes that I sent you earlier. But I'm going to start off by just asking you sort of what's your sleep routine, and what's your must-haves when it comes to like, I gotta have a dark room, I gotta have a good pillow, and what's the right amount of sleep for you, and why is that important?
All right. So must-haves for sleep. If I have my wish list, it's got to be cold. It's got to be dark, and I got to be naked. So that's kind of like
TMI, I'm telling Gina.
If I have those 3, I mean, I'll sleep 8 to 10 hours like a baby.
What do you find is the right amount of sleep for you, and what happens if you don't get enough sleep? How do you feel physically, and how does that affect your daily, weekly routine?
I mean, I got to get like 6 to 8 hours. That's usually my go-to.
Yeah.
Like anyone else, kind of common sense. If I don't get enough sleep, I feel like shit when I wake up, and then I got to figure out how to recover from my sleep deficit, right? Because everyone has a sleep deficit. If your body doesn't get enough sleep, it's going to try and make it up somewhere. So I'm usually a big napper. During the day, I don't know how I've been able to train my body to do it. I listen to actually yoga nidra, which is a talk down technique. So I'll listen to that for about 20 minutes. I can shut my eyes with that on, and a sleep mask, and I'm probably out within 45 seconds. So I get a good 20 to 25 minute nap, wake up, and I'm good to go.
And what do you think? So there was this big movement in the socials and social media where all these overachievers are like, oh man, I'll sleep enough when I'm dead. I only need 4 hours sleep a night. But to the contrary, there's been a lot of scientific research and medical research that shows sleep and recovery is one of the most important aspects of your wellness. What do you think about the guys who are like, nah, bro, I only need 4 hours?
Well, I think once again, it depends, right? When we talk to Devin about being able to redline and how she talks about going to her dark place and you got to be able to feel stress. I think any sort of successful leader, entrepreneur, you're going to have some late hours. You can't just say, listen, I'm not going to finish the assignment or this business proposal or prepare for tomorrow's meeting because it's 9:30 and I have to get a full 9 hours sleep.
I got to go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, like some nights you have to stay. I do it now still. There's some nights where I go to bed at midnight because I've been working on the podcast and helping edit and create shorts for us to promote and put out content.
Yeah.
Because we're still like this small grassroots podcast. It's not like we really have an executive producer or a content team or a scheduler or
Those
we
will
don't
come.
have people on the payroll. Yeah, I'm on the payroll and you're on the payroll. That's pretty much it, right? So someone has to get it done, and you can't just quit until it's done.
And last question. So you travel a lot, right? For work. What is different about your sleep routine when you travel? Do you have any cheat codes like white noise or?
I mean, it also depends which direction I'm traveling, right? So if I'm going west, I usually try and stay. I mean, it's a little bit different, which way you're going in the time zone, but the concept is the same. That wherever you're going, you get there. You want to stay up as long as you can till about 9 o'clock at night, if you can, just to help reset your circadian rhythm. And then obviously being outside with sunlight as much as possible to trick yourself and your internal clock to adjust to your new time zone. So, I mean, sometimes I'm able to do it, and then sometimes I'm just so like dead tired. I got to go lay down. That happened this last time I went to Europe. We landed in Spain at like 6:37. By the time we got to the hotel, which by the way, I slept like I wasn't even able to sleep on the plane, so I already started all fucked up. By the time we got to the hotel, it was like 10 o'clock. I was dead tired, and I just said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go lay down. I can't control this anymore. I know myself.
Yeah, your body knows what it needs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I basically got like a 4-hour night's sleep and like a 4-hour nap. Woke up like I just got hit by a bus, but drinking water, hanging out outside, getting a sweat, trying to get myself back into the rhythm. So it's usually about a 24-hour kick in the nuts, but then you're back into it.
And that leads us into exercise and nutrition, right? So since you just touched on that about the travel aspect of it, is there something that's a must-have when you do travel? Like, listen, I know I'm going to be, the best version of me if I get to hit the gym when you're there. I've seen some of your stuff on some of your other socials where, you're in California and you found the local gym, et cetera, or the hotel gym.
Yeah, obviously, just me being me and who I am, wherever I am, I got to go work out. And sometimes that's the luxury of having a super nice hotel gym. Probably what you experienced in Dubai the last time you're over there doing block divers work. I can only imagine how sick the hotel gym is at where you stay in Dubai. Or sometimes I just, I've had to do the poor man workout. I find a pull-up bar at a park and I'll just do, pull-ups and push-ups outside, kind of old school calisthenics.
And what's your go-to? Is it strength or cardio?
Usually strength because I'm a bilateral above the knee amputee. Just by walking around, that really is my cardio. And when I'm traveling, I'm walking around a lot, so it's really just like I'm getting cardio every time I'm up and walking around. So I kind of focus. If I have time dedicated to go work out, it's going to go be strength, and whether that's a gym workout, a push-up and pull-up workout, something along those lines.
And let's talk about nutrition. Both we talked about it a little on the podcast. I think it was the first one we did, but since we're on the kind of this travel focus as well, and I think a lot of the people who are going to be listening eventually, who are our viewers, they're busy people, right? They travel a lot for work, or they're on the road, all day doing what it is they do for work. How does your nutrition routine vary when you travel?
Yeah, I mean,
not including the coffee shop and those pistachio croissants.
Yeah. I usually try and stay in a caloric deficit when I travel because it's very easy to get suckered into just snacking constantly. So I'm a little more aware and conscious of when I'm eating and when I'm eating.
And how does that work if you're dining out, like at a restaurant? You got the menu in front of you, you're looking through it, and you're like, oh man, like it's all fried or it's all.
Yeah, no carbs or low carb, and definitely no dessert.
Let me ask you another question too, Ben. So, your generation and the age that you are right now, how much of an emphasis do you think you had while you were growing up on understanding nutrition and diet and exercise, and how much of what you have now is a function of, serving in the Army and understanding that I'm a high level performer, I'm a college athlete, I'm a tier 1 operator. It's important that I give my body the best food I can. It's kind of a 2-part question.
Yeah. So, growing up, I was I was a little bit of a chubby fat kid, I'd say, when I was in like middle school, before I really got serious into sports. And so as I got more serious into sports, I started to realize how important diet was, which also I think for self-image reasons also too. I didn't want to be a fat chubby kid, so I was more conscious about what I was eating. And then obviously, as a college athlete, as an special forces operator, you're really conscious of what you're putting in your body, just like any sort of professional athlete, right?
Sorry, forgot to tell Sarah I was going live.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Bring her in.
Bring her. I'll ask her if she can join. She's an athlete. She'd be able to answer these better than both of us, probably.
Yeah.
So I kind of jumped already into diet and nutrition, which I think we've done a good job of covering. And I know when we had Devin on the podcast, she was like, "Listen, I don't eat meat," and we were like, "Whoa!"
I told her to get the fuck out.
Exactly. What's a hard pass as far as your diet now? And even though we kicked it around a lot on the podcast, what are kind of like your 2 or 3 rules to live by when it comes to diet?
As I've gotten older, I realize how bad sugar is for you.
Yeah.
And so, I used to put sugar in my coffee all the time. I don't put sugar in my coffee at all now. I really try and limit my sugar intake. I would much rather have something fatty, like a fatty piece of meat, compared to something sugary.
And I think the right kind of fats, especially the right kind of saturated fats or things like avocado, are really important for your brain health. And there's a lot of research that's come out on that topic as well, right? About helping people understand, look, you think a 0 fat diet, because you think fat, is attributed to visceral fat, but when in fact, there's definitely a lot of health benefits to understanding how that can, help your.
Yeah, I used to have this book. I loaned this book out to one of my friends. I forget what it was called, but the storyline is this guy goes back to he's basically exploring like primitive eating and primitive ways, and it's interesting because it's like a military history book, and it's also like a health and wellness book, so it's right up my alley. The military history aspect is he goes back to Crete in Greece, and he talks about the story of how the guerrillas that were conducting unconventional warfare against the Nazis, because the Germans had taken over Crete. They were able to ambush and kidnap a Nazi general, and only, it's the highest ranking prisoner of war or something like that in the story. But the primitive eating piece that he talks about is that the Cretians.
Sounds right.
Yeah. The reason that they're, historically why they were so fit, just going up and down these mountains, and they, the longevity of their life was obviously their diet, the olive oil that they were eating, their lifestyle, but also the fat. They would eat this, their meat was very fatty. And he traces it back in the day when people used to make sacrifices to the gods. The pieces of the meat that they would sacrifice to the gods were always the fattest, like loaded with fat, because those were, in their eyes, the best pieces. So they wanted to give the best pieces of meat to the gods, so that way, they would have a great harvest, etc., health. So, as time went on and they stopped sacrificing the best pieces of meat to the gods, they realized that this meat, which they thought and they experienced was the best pieces of meat, nutritionally, it turns out to be the best pieces of meat. And it's because it's the fat, it has all the fat, right? It's the fattiest pieces of the meat, because that gives them the fuel to perform. It has all the amino acids, like everything that you really need in your diet.
I like that. Let's jump down to pillar number 4, which we've talked a little bit about as well, the stress and mindset piece. It's something you and I talk a lot about because we're talking about your grit project and some other aspects of it. But how do you deal with the day-to-day stress of just, running a multi-million-dollar business and life and kids and, your disability and everything else? What do you notice when your stress level is creeping up? And then when you do notice it, how do you tell yourself, like, okay, listen, calm down, get a hold of myself? What's your routine for dealing with stress?
Bourbon. No, I'm just fucking with you.
Used to be my routine, brother, but that didn't work so well. So,
No, it's definitely not alcohol. Alcohol is probably like just throwing fuel on the stress fire.
yeah.
I do a lot of breathing, like breath work and slash meditation, but usually every morning, I do Wim Hof breathing, which is, it's 30 deep breaths, and then you do a breath hold for an extended amount of time. And then when you feel like you need to breathe, you take a deep breath, hold it for 15 seconds, and then repeat. And that's because that's one round. So usually I'll do like 4 or 5 rounds of that in the morning, just to get myself going. In like stressful situations, I just find myself that I got to breathe. I found that during my time as an athlete, when I was like super stressed out, because I'm panting, if I can control my breathing and take a couple deep breaths and exhale and like just get rid my body of that stress, like physically, it feels like. I'm able to calm down. One of the biggest reasons that I had issues during pre-scuba was I love to breathe, right? Like in stressful situations, I naturally just go to breathe. Trying to tie knots underwater at 10 feet while you're already stressed out, like, you want to breathe. So that was one of the why I didn't really work in the water for combat diving. But yeah, man, the breath work and the breathing piece is huge. I mean, I do that when I travel. I do that every time I wake up. I do that in the afternoon sometimes just to relax. It helps me break away, be more like in the moment, and just kind of focus on relaxing.
Tell me a story that pops to mind, about a stressful situation you were in back when you were in the army and you were deployed someplace, and just, not necessarily with, let's say, your injury, but just another time where something happened. And tell me about how you dealt with the stress of the situation. Like, okay, guys, stop, pause, whatever the particular situation was that you were in that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, almost every single time that I was in a firefight overseas, I would take a physical pause and go, and then I would key the mic and talk on the radio. So that way everyone would hear my voice nice and calm and cool. And they wouldn't hear me like, hey, this is Serpent 1-1 Alpha. We're taking fire. I need support. It would be more of, this is Serpent 1-1 Alpha, declaring a tick, troops in contact, right? Like, it's a lot more cooler and calmer.
And and now that you're older and you've got that experience behind you, how does that segue into what it's like in the civilian world now, where, like, let's say you've got a stressful situation at work, you've got an important client who just showed up and they were supposed to have 2 SUVs waiting at the FOB for them, and everything's just flying south. Like, what's the transition been for you now to the civilian world? Because obviously, you're not getting shot at least physically, maybe metaphorically, but how has that helped you deal with that, having that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. It obviously transitions where before walking into a meeting with somebody of super importance, I take a deep breath. But to be honest, a lot of these day-to-day stressful situations in my new work life, I just remind myself that this is nothing compared to like the circumstances that I had before of like true life and death, or the things that I've done before. I've been in the room with many super wealthy people. I air quote that, and people of importance. I air quote that because it's all relative, right? Like, sure, they have a plane, they have a lot more zeros at the end of their bank accounts, but it doesn't really impress me in a way. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, fanboying, because I view other things that are success. I look up to other people. So if I'm ever starting to get nervous about like a business meeting, I just remind myself, like, they're also human, they also fail. They probably got a bunch of shit going on in their life. Nothing's ever perfect.
I like that. And that brings me to teams and accountability, right? Because you came from a team environment where, as a young man, and then, as a 20 something year old man, and then a 30 something year old man, what I'd like to think about as the formative years of your adult life, they were primarily shaped by your experiences in the military. So you got used to having that team environment around you where you and the men and women that you worked with held each other accountable. How does that segue into where you are now in the civilian world? And how does that work with you and Gina as it relates to the pillars that we're talking about holding each other accountable? Like, hey, I'm sure she's like, hey, Ben, like, I don't know if she's like Sarah, but like, are you sure you want to order that dessert? Maybe we'll just get some fruit. Or are you sure you want that bourbon? Tell me a little bit about, why teamwork and accountability is important in your professional life and in your personal life.
Yeah. So that question's all over the place. So let's start with
You're welcome.
it was in the professional business
The
world.
segue from the military into the civilian world, and the
Okay.
difference between
And
teamwork and accountability.
I think that with teamwork and accountability, there's teamwork that goes into the work world, but it's not the same teamwork that you have in the military. Like teamwork, I feel like you actually care more about your team members in the military or even on a sports team, probably because the stakes are higher. In the business world, I mean, here's reality. If we're working together on Monday, maybe Tuesday I got to come in and fire you, right? Like what does that mean as like a teammate? And it's not because you performed poorly. Maybe it's just because revenues are low. You're still a good guy, but I got to get rid of you. That doesn't happen in the military, right? Like in the military, the only reason you get kicked off a team is because you're not performing, right? And as a teammate, like it's just two totally different worlds. Um, and then as like a spouse marriage thing, for Gina and I mean, we're definitely teammates. We hold each other accountable. Like if one of us is slacking, we're not scared to be like, "What's this bullshit?" You need to fix this. Sometimes in harsh words, sometimes in polite political words. Diet wise, like we both eat pretty similar. So if it's like neither of us are going to be constantly like looking to go snack, and we're going to like call them out because just I think internally we're disciplined that way. If anything, it's like, hey, I'm going to have some ice cream, do you want to split? It's because we're teammates.
So in an organization, and in the private sector, in the corporate world, when we hold people accountable, it's typically done by explaining to them the matrix by which their performance will be measured. And as a leader in an organization, like you are now with the role that you have in the company where you're working, you hold people accountable to those expectations that you set for them. Just tell me a little bit more about the difference between how people are held accountable in the military and now how you hold them accountable in the civilian world.
Well, the accountability piece is similar, right? Like you said, both in the military and in the civilian world, there's a scope of work, understanding what your task and purpose is. Are you able to achieve these metrics? That's very similar.
Okay, and then obviously the most important part of that is communication, right? So as an officer, as a junior officer, and then a more senior officer, your method of communicating with the people who you're responsible for was clear and concise, and your communication was one where it was written, right? So you're able to hold that accountable. Is it the same for you now in the civilian world? Like, let's
I mean,
say
it has been. Sometimes it has, sometimes it hasn't. Like, sometimes I've had good leaders in the civilian world that are very clear and concise of like expectations and counseling, and not just bad counseling, but good counseling. And then sometimes I've had people that just haven't done shit. And I've had the same thing in the military too. You have good leaders and bad leaders in the military. I'm sure you have too, where some leaders really like take the time to counsel you, take the time to see how you're developing professionally, take the time to see like, do you need help on your professional course of life, like in the military? Like, what's your next job? What do you really want to do in the military? And then some of them just couldn't give two shits. I've seen the same thing in the civilian world where some people actually care about, what you want to do professionally. Is this something that you want to do? Are you looking for another job? How can I help launch that? And then some people just want to use you like a succubus and get whatever they can out of you.
Welcome to America.
Yeah.
So we talked at the top of the hour here when we started about how one of my goals was for us to try and come up with what we called a 3 to deploy concept, right? Like we want people and viewers to kind of tune in and listen, and hopefully they'll walk away from this with something. But if we've done an absolutely horrible job and all we've done is bullshit, but at least we get to the end of this, this team room session, and we drop the 3 to deploy on the screen. Kind of the 3 ideas that I came up with today, just based on knowing that we were going to talk about the 5 pillars of wellness, are scrolling across the bottom of the screen, right? Number 1 is, as it relates to sleep and recovery, I like to set a 10, 15, 20, maybe even a 30-minute wind down alarm, right? So I've got it set up on my Apple phone and on my watch to where I get a reminder 30 minutes before bedtime. And it says, hey, like if you're, it's just a reminder, like bedtime in 30 minutes. If you're watching TV, if you're on the computer doing shorts and making promo material, and it lets me know, look, scientific studies and research have shown that being in front of a screen and watching TV and being engaged on my phone are not going to help wire my brain so that it's turning down when it's time for me to go to bed. So that's the first one that I put up. And the second one, I think from a movement and activity, or what we call exercise and movement pillar, is an option where, I want to challenge people to schedule just one 20-minute zone 2 walk this week. And by zone 2, I mean get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. Walk with purpose, walk with a pace. If you're monitoring your heart rate, get your heart rate elevated in the whatever is elevated in zone 2 for you. So for someone like you or me, that may be 80, 85 beats per minute, something like that, so that I'm going to break a little bit of a sweat. And then number 3, which is the easiest, hits to the last piece that we talked about, team and accountability, right? If you've got your spouse, say, baby, this is what I want to do this week, and I want you to help hold me accountable for it. If you've got a buddy or a friend, somebody that you can text who's a partner or a coworker or something, it could be just as simple as, hey man, I'm having a drink every night before I go to bed, and I'd like to not have a drink this week and just save it for the weekend, or whatever your goal is. But pick something and find somebody that can be your teammate or your accountability partner on this, and just set up an agreement with them. Like, hey bro, I'm trying not to do this. I'm going to text you. Give me some thoughts on 3 to deploy. And if you had to choose one, maybe not even one on the list, but what would it be? Because I'm going to be your accountability buddy, and I'm going to ask you to start texting me.
Well, let's start with this. Your zone 2 heart rate is at 86 beats per minute.
I think it's a little less than that, to be honest.
My zone 2 starts at like 112, 115.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that because your cardio sucks?
No, I mean, my resting heartbeat is like around 65. When I sleep, it drops to the high 40s. But I have like a really big area for zone 1 where it just takes a lot to get it going. So for me to get to zone 2, and Sarah's the same way, for her to get to zone 2, like for her to get to zone 3 is really, really hard. She's got to be doing 15 miles an hour at Orange Theory on the treadmill.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, my resting heart rate, before I got injured, my resting heart rate was like 50 beats per minute.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of the same. It's more like 48. Like when you sleep, how low does your heart rate go when you sleep?
That's a good question. Let me give you a precise answer. I know it's in the 40s for me. I haven't checked it lately, but if you believe what my Apple Watch says, let's see. Well, first of all, it says I slept 7.5 hours last night, which I don't believe.
I was going to say, if you did, that's a plus.
Compared to the last few nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the 40s.
40 what? Like high 40s or low 40s?
Let's see here. I'm looking at respiratory rate too. High 40s.
Okay.
It started out at 72, it went down to 53 halfway through the night, and then it dropped down to 47.
Okay.
And I'm 10 years older than you.
Yeah. Oh no, and your body mass is like twice the size of mine too, so.
Let's not talk about that. I'm working on that. I need those.
Sorry, I'm just.
My breathing
Yes.
is interesting. My breathing went from a max of 16 and a half per minute to 10 per minute. So, a 5 or 6 second cycle per minute of breathing, 2-3 seconds in, 2-3 seconds out. It's about right. That's a good relaxation state.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, my 3 to deploy, and I'll choose one, is I do this anyway, so it's pretty easy. A couple times a week, I do a zone 2, or I try and do like a zone 2 type cardio exercise, but it's usually like a Tabata, like 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. Ski erg type exercise, or on the treadmill, or bike, just to keep my heart like up and going. So that would be mine.
Perfect.
I challenge you for your one to your choose one to do a simple 10-minute Wim Hof breathing every night before bed and see how you feel.
All right.
I'll send you the link.
I was going to say, send me the link so I know what it is that we're getting at. And I'll give it a shot, and then we'll rally next week, and we'll make that something that we go back to in the Q&A session. Anything that we brought up today that you wanted to just bounce anything off? We've been live for about 40 minutes, so we're good on time. Went a little over the 30, but.
No, I mean, listen, this is the first kind of go test run with this. So.
And the tech seems to be working, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't played with the
I saw on YouTube, on your YouTube channel, you were live.
Okay, perfect.
So that is working.
And here, I'll give you the, where's the Team Harrow? The Team Harrow plug right now as we're getting ready to close out. Why this other thing's on the bottom of the screen? Sorry, man, I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
What, the Q&A session thing?
No, this little, there's like a little shadow. Can you see it on the bottom right, or is that only on my screen?
Oh, I see it on the bottom right, like that gray thing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
All right, so we can find more of this in the full podcast on Team Harrow. And what I'll do when we make these changes is, I'll make sure to include all the socials in the YouTube feed. And then what we'll do is, as we're going to start rolling these out, I'll promote them a little bit more in advance. And then when you and I kind of hammer down what time it'll be done, it's probably better to do this in the evening where people can tune in and we can take actual Q&A.
Yeah.
There. Awesome.
All right, dude.
All right. I'll catch up with you in a little bit. Thanks for your time. Peace out.
I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.